Hi everybody. So in the last video, I apologized for how long it had taken me to put out another video, and that was 4 months ago. So, sorry. Um, so now it is time for the fourth in my Wheel of Time reread series. I hope you don't mind the quarantine hair growth and all of that. So, this is The Shadow Rising. That is, well, that's too many things to talk about. I'm going to have to cut some of these. That. No, like that. I'll take that out. Some of these things are really interesting, but I don't want my video to run 20 minutes. So there's cool stuff. There's so much stuff. No. No. No, that's just an error. That's just an editing error. I'm not going to talk about that. I gotta leave that. I gotta leave that one in. I don't even remember why I marked that. Take that out. Okay, let me make sure that I'm not missing that bit. Okay, good. All right. Okay. All right, that's much more reasonable. I can get through this in a relatively short period of time. Okay. Again, I'm going to have a general review, and then I'll have a spoiler section after that, and that will be spoilers for the entire series. Okay. Since this is really about me rereading these books. So, this is a great novel. I think that at this point, and I've said this when I talked about the other books in the series, that you can probably read them on their own as standalone novels. I don't think you can really do that here. At this point, the series is really starting to run along, but it's a great book. I don't think it's great. It would be great on its own. I think you need the context of everything that comes before it in order to give weight and meaning to what goes on in here. There is a section here. There are 2 chapters in here. And there are chapters 24 and 25, I think. Yeah. No, 25 and 26 that are absolutely... chapters 25 and 26 are probably some of the, just by itself, some of the best pieces of fantasy I've ever read, some of the best pieces of fiction I've ever read, those 2 chapters. This is when the background of the Aiel people is revealed, and it's beautiful. It's brilliant. It's so well done, but I don't think you'd have the impact of it unless you'd read the previous 3 books. So I could recommend just reading the series so you can read all the way up to this point so you can read these chapters in context. They're so well done. I've heard it said that in a short story, in a well-crafted short story, not a single word is wasted. There are no words that aren't needed. Every word that wasn't needed has been cut. Don't really need to do that. A writer doesn't really need to do that with a novel. I don't think there's a single word that's wasted in these 2 chapters. They're brilliant. And they are. I've sat down and just read these two chapters on more than one occasion. They're so well done. They're so brilliantly done. When they finally get to it in the show, I hope they do it right. They have to do this part right. If they don't, I'll never forgive them. They have to get this part right. So, yeah, that's some of the best fiction I've ever read. So just for that, you should strongly consider reading the series. I'm going to make a couple points about the publishing here. Before I get into the spoilers, I got this off of Paperback Swap. This is a hardcover, not a full-sized hardcover book. Let me show you. This It's got to be Path of Daggers, which I also got a paperback swap. This is immaculate. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is almost flawless. This is a full-size hardback. This is not. See? Well, see? This is smaller, right? It's closer to trade paperback size. So the fact that it's smaller means it's probably a book club edition. For those of you who are really young, you don't remember Book of the Month Club. They're still around, apparently. But one of the ways Book of the Month Club attracted readers is they sold discounted editions of things, and one of the ways that they did that was by having these special editions which are a bit smaller. So I found several of these around. So this is a fairly early copy. The list of books inside, or opposite the title page, it only has the first 4 books in the series. There's another thing here there's some editing mistakes in here. I don't want to go too far into. There's some places where Nynaeve and Avienda's names are swapped accidentally, and I think Elaine and Egwene are swapped. So there's some errors in here. The other thing that's wrong, or just kind of screwy, is the chapter icons. So, I'll show you this. You see the chapter icon at the top of chapter 9 there? That icon, okay? That icon shows up at the beginning of most Wheel of Time books. But otherwise, the other books in the series have different. There's different chapter icons at the beginning of each chapter, so it tells you what's in the chapter. All of the chapters in this book have that icon. That's wrong. That's just wrong. I'll show you with Path of Daggers. If I just find a random chapter somewhere, right? So like there. So there's the lion there. This is probably an Elaine chapter. There's a lion, right? Different chapters have different icons. All of the chapters in this book have the wheel icon, right? That I showed you before, which is the snake and the infinity symbol with the wheel. So that's just a mistake, and just they don't generally do that. So that's weird, and that's kind of odd. The other thing that's weird about this particular book is the structure. That there's a structural difference. Most books have a prologue, and the prologue usually has several point of view characters that are outside the main story and sort of set up what's going to happen. This does that in chapter 1. And then the main story moves into chapter 2. So chapter 1 kind of serves the purpose of the way the prologue is set up, and every other book in the series has prologue. So that's just, I don't know what they were doing there. I don't know what Jordan was doing there, or his editors, or whatever it is. I don't know why they did it that way, but they did it that way. So there. Okay. So now we'll move into the spoiler section, where I will talk more about other stuff. Okay. So one of the things that happens early that I like is there's more hints about Tom and Moraine's relationship. People say it kind of came out of nowhere. I knew there were some hints, but here's a few more hints that have been dropped here. When they're about to have a conversation in Tyr, he thinks about Moiraine and he says to himself, "Now there was a beautiful woman with every grace a man could want, including laughing at his quips." And by the way, that is one thing that, if you'll notice earlier in the books, Moiraine laughs at Tom's jokes. She doesn't laugh at much else. She laughs at Tom's jokes. And so he says that. Then they have their little meeting when it's not very flirtatious, but there is some intrigue there. And then she says to him, "You will survive Terabon. Right? I will see you again. You will survive Terabon." She hasn't been through the Terangriel and Rudion at this point, but she has been through the stone doorway and talked to the Aelfin already. So she knows that part. So there's some hints there. There were some hints about Moiraine and Tom's romance there. Another one later. So Randall Thor may be lucky if the next age remembers his name correctly. Yeah, that happens again and again about the names not being remembered correctly. Len Strong in the Arm, Anil the Wise Counselor, those sorts of names not being remembered correctly. Randall Thor not being the Thor analog in this series. Couple of other ones like look, Rand sat down cross-legged nearby. I can believe the stories. Gautam sitting beneath Avandasura for 40 years to gain wisdom. Right now, I can believe. Right, that's a reference to Gautam. That's a reference to Gautama, the Buddha, sitting under a tree to gain wisdom. But in this story, it's changed to Avandasura. So it's another one of these surviving legends from a prior world. So then we go through the glass columns in Rudion, and we learn all about the Aiel. I always talked about this before. Two things I want to find each time I go through these. Two things I want to highlight in each one of these reviews. One is a scene that I've forgotten about. I'll get to that. And the other one is a great, great line. The best line here, the best line in this book, I think, is when Lewin, who is the first Aiel, one of the first Aiel to kill, and he's cast out from the wagons. He said, and his mother says to him, I had a son once with a face like that. I do not wish to see it on a killer, which is why they hide your face from me. And he says, just with this, desperate, just grief he feels. I am still Aiel! Lewin shouted, but they did not look back. He thought he heard Luca crying. The wind rose, picking up dust, and he veiled his face. I am Aiel! That moment, it's heart-wrenching. Those two chapters are so good. When, after Matt comes out from the eel fin this time in Rudion, and they've given him that the Ashandarai, and he says he read what it says. Thus is he's reading the carving on the spear. Thus is our treaty written. Thus is agreement made. Thought is the arrow of time. Memory never fades. What was asked is given. The price is paid. Yeah, pretty joke, you see. I'll slice them with their own wit if I ever get a chance. I'll give them thought and memory. Right. Okay, so these are more hints about Matt being Odin. Matt's a trickster like Odin. Matt is associated with ravens. Odin's ravens are Hunin and Munin, I think. Hunin and Munin, I believe, are the name of his ravens, which translate to thought and memory. Those are the names of Odin's ravens, thought and memory. So again, hints about thought and memory relating to Matt being Odin. Alana here, when Perrin meets up with her in the Two Rivers, Alana says, I would have tied a string to each of you, even bonded you. He tried to pull back, but she tightened her grip and smiled. I am not so lost to custom yet as to bond a man against his will. Not quite yet. Yeah, not for another 2 books, right? Perrin meeting Lord Luke. Perrin despised him on sight. He really is a great judge of character. Perrin despised him on sight. And that just may be Ta'Viren working in him. So, Rand asks about his mother. He asks the Aiel Wise Ones, and they talk about her. So, this is a story that I wish they'd ever told, Tigraine. We don't really find out that much about her, and I think she was fascinating. And she said that she had to be a maiden of the spear until the maidens go to Tarvalon. She says, you must understand how it sounded. The maiden The maidens go to Tarvalin? No, Aiel had crossed the Dragon Wall since the day that we first reached the Threefold Land. That's not entirely true. But yeah, it would be another 4 years. Right. So they go out and they talk about the fact that Janduin wouldn't leave her behind. He said, by the laws, she should have returned to the Threefold Land. A maiden is forbidden to carry the spear while she carries a child, but Janduin could forbid her nothing. Had she asked the moon on a necklace, he would have tried to give it to her. So she stayed. That's actually kind of weird because there's a legitimate reason to keep her there because she knows the wetlands and they don't. So having her with them and not sending her back, that doesn't seem to make sense. Among the Aiel, she would be one of the only people who actually knows her way around. She knows customs. She may know how to find things, where to buy things if they need to buy things. They don't necessarily know that she's a noblewoman, so they don't know about that advantage. But it would make more sense to have her as a guide to keep her around. So that's kind of weird. That's sort of just a logical error that somebody didn't think through very well. Jordan does make some of those mistakes, but doesn't make a lot. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes like that, but he makes a few. This whole section about this was the section that I want to talk about that I'd forgotten was in this book. But when Perrin fights the Murderall, that whole scene is when they're near the wine spring water, I think. But forget. But yeah, that whole sequence where when he gets rallies his men and fights a Murderall. That was just, yeah, I'd totally forgotten about that scene. So there's another section about this. He's talking about Slayer. A borderlander, maybe Shienaran, though his hair was long, not shaved to a topknot, and was held back by a braided leather cord just like Lan's. He could not be Malkiri. Lan was the last living Malkiri. Not the last one. I don't know, it seems weird that Slayer has a Hadori, because that's supposed to be about fighting the shadow, and he's an instrument of the shadow. So it's kind of weird, but yeah, I guess. He talks about the boys who follow him. Adventure? They were idiots. Yeah, of course, in the first book, they're idiots. They leave the Two Rivers, they're idiots. He hasn't been gone that long, but I guess he's hardened quite a bit, thinking these guys are idiots. He feels so much older than they are. He's not really, but he's a lot more experienced. Yeah, this is another great line. It's not as great as the other one, but he said the Gara. Avian is talking to him about the Gara was a Gara, she explained, could bite through a boot. It could also kill a bull. Others were worse, of course. The Gara was slow and not really dangerous unless you were stupid enough to step on it. When she flung the huge lizard off her blade, the yellow and bronze faded right into the cracked clay. Oh yes, just do not be stupid enough to step on it. So then we go a little further, and Rand says, and this is something that isn't clear unless I go back through it. I certainly didn't pick up on this the first time. I'm not sure I picked up on this the second time I read this. This is the number 3 for this book. His dangers were not Aiel. Moiraine to one side and Lanfear to the other. How could I have more danger than that? So he already knows that Kelly Shogi is in the peddler's wagons. He already knows that's Lanfear. She's disguised herself. He knows she's there. He knows she's there. He doesn't tell anybody else, but he already knows that she's there. So he's just like, okay, what's going to happen next? He's just sort of waiting for the trap to spring. So he already knows that she's there. before they ever reveal any of that. So here's, I think this is an error here. After the battle in Emmons Field, when they fight off the Trollocs, and they go to, and the White Cloaks come to arrest him, and he said, "I said I would not." They go to arrest him, and he says, "I would not resist if you aided." Surprising how calm his voice was inside. You see the slow, cold anger. "If you aided, White Cloak, where were you?" The man did not answer. Days Conger stepped through, and she says, "They were on the green," she announced loudly, "all lined up and sitting their horses pretty as girls ready for a dance on Sunday. They never stirred." I went back through this. I can't find the point where Perrin says that. It says that he will go with them if they aid. So that's just, I think that's just an editing mistake, because that should be there somewhere. Overall, this is, some people say that this is one of the best fantasy novels of all time. It is great. It really is great. There's a lot of things in this book I like. Perrin's, the developments of Perrin and Matt and Rand, and the reveal about the Aiel. We get some significant developments of. We don't get a lot with Egwene yet, but Nynaeve facing off against Moghedien, and we have that. We find out how strong Nynaeve really is, and a lot of little things that happen in Tachiko. So this I really enjoyed this. This is really good. So I am a bit further along. I'm already into reading book 6, so I should be able to have the 5th review up in a few days. I hope. It shouldn't take me nearly so long, and I will keep it up. So please like, share, subscribe, and I also will have a link below for Paperback Swap, where I get a lot of these books. But please comment. I'd like to know what you think. If you agree, disagree, whatever it is. So until next time.